It is a unique monument because it's not a figure.
Standing near the intersection of Canal and 15th Streets may be one of the most peculiar attractions in all of Virginia. A massive monument perched on a pedestal, this is not. Just a simple metal box, frozen in time.
It is a very interesting memorial.
The low-key landmark honors one of the most daring escapes in American history, orchestrated by a Virginian hungry to taste liberty for the first time. Henry Brown is born into slavery in Louisa County around 1816, is a married father of 3 who sings in a church choir.
Living in Richmond, he was working in a tobacco factory.
But in 1849, one event sends Henry reeling, a moment of despair that alters his life forever. Henry's wife, Nancy, is sold to a new owner in North Carolina.
And when his wife was sold, the rules were that the children went with the wife, so he lost his whole family in that sale.
The 33-year-old bids his loved ones farewell forever. A desperate Henry makes a bold decision: find freedom at any cost. He would not run away under the cover of darkness or choose violence. Henry's plot involves deception and risk.
In order for the plan to go ahead, Brown paid $86, almost $3,000 in today's money, to Samuel Smith. This was over half of his savings, but it was a risk he was willing to take. Smith then went to Philadelphia and spoke to members of the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society. The abolitionists he spoke to included James Miller McKim, William Still, and Cyrus Burleigh. These men advised him on how to successfully execute the escape plan. Smith was told to mail Brown to the office of Passmore Williamson. This was because Williamson was an abolitionist who was the secretary of the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society and a member of its Vigilance Committee. In order for the escape to work, Brown first had to get out of work, so he painfully burnt his finger to the bone with sulfuric acid. The next day,
on March 29, 1849, Henry, with the help of 2 friends, a white shoemaker and a freed black man, climbs into a crate.
There was a shipping service called Adams Express.
Henry attempts to mail himself to freedom. Destination, Pennsylvania.
He got into his box, which was nailed closed by his accomplices. The box that Brown would travel in was sent as dry goods. No one would ever expect that a human would cram themselves into a tight crate that measured 3 feet long, 2 feet 7 inches deep, and 2 feet wide. The crate in which he travelled was lined with woolen cloth and baize to make things slightly less uncomfortable. There were only 3 small holes cut for air. Moreover, for nourishment he only had a small portion of water and a few biscuits. The box also indicated which way round it must be, having been written in large on the box.
The 3-foot by 2.5-foot box is nailed shut with the 5'8", 200-pound father inside.
Even when he was put on his head, he didn't cry or make any sounds, and he just, he said basically he prayed.
Brown described at one point he passed out because he was upside down and all the blood was flowing to his head.
Henry endures unimaginable hardships, squeezed in the wooden box.
He shipped himself as if he were a piece of cargo, as if he were a package. And legally, under slavery, he, a human being, was considered property.
It can't be underemphasized that how important this was, that he get out of Richmond by any means necessary.
Brown, it was 100% worth it. He wrote, "If you have never been deprived of your liberty, as I was, you cannot realize the power of that hope of freedom, which was to me indeed an anchor to the soul, both sure and steadfast."
The crate is transferred from a train to a boat and then a wagon. The trip takes 27 hours. The special delivery arrives at the Anti-Slavery Society in Philadelphia the next day.
My heart swelled in my throat. I could scarcely breathe. Great sweats came over me. I gave up all hope, related Brown.
As the escapees' friends on the outside fear the worst.
We opened the box and up rose, with a face radiant with joy and gratitude, one of the finest looking men you ever saw in your life. Brown extended his hand and said, "Good morning, gentlemen."
Henry's getaway causes a sensation.
So the story of a slave having escaped in a box got out. And then it ended up in the New York papers, and all the papers reproduced it. So it became known as somebody had escaped in a box.
The freed man travels the abolitionist circuit across the Northeast, lecturing crowds on the evils of slavery. But Henry is not out of danger. The Fugitive Slave Law of 1850 forces Henry to move to England.
In the 1860s, he performed in shows as a magician under the names of Professor H. Box Brown and the African Prince. While he was in England, Brown married Jane Floyd, the daughter of a tin worker. They later had a daughter called Annie and a son, Edward.
For 25 years, customers in the UK clamor to hear Box Brown retell his disappearing act from bondage. His story leaves audience members speechless.
He carried his original box with him on tour, and he would climb in the box at shows.
Before returning to North America in 1875, Henry publishes 2 autobiographies. To this day, at the Virginia Museum of History and Culture, a rare 1850 lithograph of Henry emerging from his box survives in the archives.
He likened it to a resurrection, and indeed that's the title of this print, The Resurrection of Henry Box Brown.
Brown and his family eventually settle in Toronto, never returning to his native Richmond. Henry died on June 15, 1897. He was 82 years old. Great Escape still reverberates across the centuries. A man who risked so much to set himself free.